Hello students, this is Dr. Isha Paik once again in front of you with another paper. So today we will solve paper 2 of O-Levels Biology, that is 5090, paper 2 May-June 2023. Before we start the video, I would like to remind you all that if you have not subscribed, liked or shared our channel and our videos, please do so because this is just for the sole cause of the people suffering in the Palestine. Alright, so let's officially begin the video. Begin the paper. So as I said that we're going to solve May June 2023 paper 2 of O-Levels Biology, that is 5090. So the time limit that is allotted for you to solve this paper is 1 hour and 45 minutes. The total marks that this paper carries are 80 marks, and the questions that are given in this paper are almost from around 7 to 8. Alright, so let's begin with question number 1. Table 1.1 lists 3 of the gases present in the atmosphere. So the gases are oxygen, carbon dioxide and nitrogen. So they're asking you the percentages of the each gas. So oxygen is about 21%, carbon dioxide is about 0.4%, and nitrogen is about 78%. So you can either give the ranges or you can just write the exact values if you remember the values. So I don't think so that these values are very difficult to remember. So like it's better that you write the exact learned values. Alright, so move on to the next part of this question. Part B says some foods are packaged in a sealed container that contains a mixture of same gases with percentages that are different from those found in atmospheric air. Figure 1.1 shows a diagram of food packaged in this way. This method of food packaging slows down decomposition of food. Suggest how the percentage of one gas labeled in table 1.1 is changed when used to package food in this way. So basically what will happen when we cover anything with the lid, obviously the air going inside that particular container is decreased. Air carries oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide and other gases as well. So what will happen when we cover this lid? Obviously the samples of the food present inside the container will start to decompose, and how the decomposition takes place, the organisms or the microorganisms will start using up the will start using up the oxygen present in the air inside this entire container. So what will happen? That oxygen will be decreased, since this is a 1 mark question, you will gain the mark for writing this sentence only as well. But for your information, you should know that carbon dioxide will increase. Alright, so part 2 says that explain how this change will slow down the decomposition of food. Okay, so basically what we are doing, we are covering the container having the food with the lid. So we are actually reducing the amount of air or amount of oxygen coming inside this container, right? So when the air or the oxygen coming inside this container will be reduced or will be decreased, so obviously there will be less oxygen for the microorganisms like bacteria or fungi to carry out aerobic respiration, yes or no? So, and hence they will perform less respiration and less decomposition will take place. So obviously less growth of the microbes or the microorganisms will take place on the food samples. Alright, so you have to write down these 3 points, that there will be less air coming inside the container, so less aerobic respiration will take place by the microbes, and the decomposition process will slow down. Alright, so 1 mark for telling that there will be less air or less oxygen coming inside the container. 2nd mark for telling that less aerobic respiration will take place by the microbe. And 3rd mark for telling the decomposition process will slow down. Alright, so part 3 says 2 advantages of slowing down decomposition of packaged food. Alright, so whenever we are going to buy anything, the companies make sure that they are using safe packaging for whatever the product they are selling. Why is that so? Why do they use the safe packaging? The purpose of safe packaging is to slow down the growth of microorganisms, and hence to slow down the rate of decomposition of the packaged stuff or any other thing. any product. All right, so what does this mean? This means that this is going to slow down the decomposition, means that this is going to prolong the shelf life. So one advantage will be that the shelf life will prolong. Secondly, that obviously when the when for example, if the fruit seller is selling the fruit that is rotten or that is not packaged properly, so that's why it got rotten. Obviously, whoever the person will eat that rotten food will get food poisoning, right? So to make sure that there's a less risk of food poisoning, the foods are packaged very well, and this is obviously going to decrease the amount of waste that will be reduced. All right, so number one reason would be to prolong, like longer shelf life. Longer shelf life, less risk of food poisoning. Alright, so now come up towards question number 2. Describe the physical digestion in humans and explain its importance. So the physical digestion, the word physical digestion means that we just need to describe the passage of food from our mouth to the stomach, alright, and explain its importance. So what is the passage of food? The food starts its journey by when we take the food inside our mouth, obviously. All right. So what will happen? The number one thing that will happen will be that the food will be broken down to smaller pieces without any chemical change. That is chewing. All right. So the teeth are going to break down this food into smaller pieces without any chemical change. And what will be the importance of this? The importance of this will be that this is going to increase the surface area of the food for chemical digestion. So 2 marks for telling what physical digestion is and 2 marks for telling its importance. Alright, so what is the physical digestion? Physical digestion is breaking down of the food into smaller pieces, that is basically chewing by the teeth, and this assists or this helps the movement of food from the mouth to the stomach, that is swallowing. So this eases the swallowing process by increasing surface area for the food and for the chemical digestion or for the enzymes to act on. Alright, secondly, that is the other physical digestion will be that peristalsis or the churning of the stomach that happens with the food. So this is going to help mixing the food with the enzymes. All right, so number one part of the physical digestion is that what is physical digestion? Physical digestion is chewing of the food by teeth, in which it's broken down into smaller pieces. This increases the surface area for the food, which provides ease in swallowing. Second point will be that peristalsis in the stomach, which is also the type of physical digestion that helps the food to mix with the enzymes. Alright, so I hope that this part of the physical digestion is clear, that physical digestion comprises of the chewing process by the teeth, alright, which breaks down the food into smaller pieces. This provides ease in swallowing because surface area has been increased. And then the second part of the physical digestion is peristalsis in the stomach, in which food is mixed with the enzymes. Alright, so 2 marks for each explanation and describing what physical digestion is. Now coming towards part B, state the name of the chemical present in the stomach that kills many ingested bacteria. Obviously, you all know that is HCl, hydrochloric acid, that provides acidic environment, and this helps to kill the microbes or the bacteria that has been ingested with the food into the stomach. Alright. Part 2 says bacteria that are not killed in the stomach may cause disease. Say the term used to describe organisms that cause disease. So the organisms that cause disease are known as pathogens. You are not supposed to write bacteria or fungi or viruses. You just need to write about the basic definition of any organism that causes the disease. is pathogen. All right. Then the type of immunity gained after infection by organism that cause disease. Always remember that whenever we gain immunity after an infection, means that whenever we gain the immunity by an immune response. All right. So that form of immunity is known as active immunity. Infection means whenever we are attacked by the antigen, then the body creates its own immune response, its own antibodies. It provides us with active immunity. All right. So part C says that disease can be caused by viruses. Yellow fever is an example of a disease caused by virus. Outline how a weakened form of the virus that causes yellow fever can be used to give a person long-term immunity against the disease. So what happens is that weakened form of virus means that vaccination. All right, vaccine contains the weakened form of antigens or weakened form of bacteria or pathogens. Basically, vaccines contain weakened form of pathogens that are ingested or injected in the human body. So their antigens or the dead viruses or dead antigens are recognized as foreign bodies by the lymphocytes of our body, which creates or which synthesizes antibodies and memory cells, and this gives us long-term immunity. Okay, so long-term immunity, always remember that long-term immunity is provided by memory cells. Okay, so we are going to write that the vaccine contains weakened pathogens that are recognized as foreign after getting injected into the body. The lymphocytes produce antibodies against the pathogen, and the memory cells are also produced. Cells are also produced. Memory cells are also produced, which gives lifelong immunity. All right. So one mark for telling that vaccine contains the weakened pathogens. The second mark for telling that lymphocytes the second mark for telling that they are recognized as foreign after getting injected in the body, and third mark for telling that lymphocytes will produce antibodies against the pathogen and memory cells will give lifelong immunity. All right. So the thing is, basically, to approach any question, you should have to look on the marks that are allotted to that question first, so that you could decide that what type of answer and how many points you should include in your answer. All right. So by looking at the question marks, I realized that I need to make up 3 distinguishable points for this question. All right. So in this way, we are going to answer this question. Moving on to question number 3, part A. So question number 3 shows that nervous system coordinates and regulates body functions. Figure 3.1 shows 2 diagrams, each showing parts of the nervous system and a neuron. So diagram A is showing the brain and the spinal cord. Diagram B is showing the peripheral nerves. So we all know that brain and the spinal cord makes up the central nervous system that is known as CNS. Okay, and the rest, that is comprising of the nerves and the nerve fibers, peripheral nerves, will make up the peripheral nervous system that is known as PNS, and it consists of the nervous tissues like neurons and the tissues outside the CNS. So describe the parts of the nervous system shown in each diagram. Diagram A, obviously, we just discussed that. Diagram A shows brain and spinal cord. That is CNS. Diagram B shows nerves and nerve fibers, and this will make the PNS. Okay, so now moving on to part B. Figure 3.2 shows the junction between 2 neurons, relay neuron, sensory neuron, vesicle containing neurotransmitters. So part 1 says name the junction shown in figure 3.2. So we know that whenever there is a junction between the two neurons, the junction between the 2 neurons is known as synapse. Part 2, draw an arrow on figure 3.2 to show the direction that an impulse will travel. So the direction from the where the impulse will travel will be from over here till here, because the vesicles containing neurotransmitters are getting released from this side. All right. So what is happening? See, the vesicles containing neurotransmitter releasing from this side. All right. So obviously this means that the nerve impulses is getting transferred from here to here. All right. So the direction will be towards this, means from right to left. Okay. So part 3 says the distance between the two neurons shown in figure 3.2 is 0.tetra03 millimeters. State this distance in the units of micrometers, and there's a space for working. So we all should know that. You all should know what a milli means, what a micro means, what a nano means, what a hexa or what a deca means. All right. So over here they're asking us to convert this value millimeters into micrometers. All right. So 1 millimeter is equals to 1000 micrometers. 1 millimeter equals to 1000. 1000 means 1 into 10 raised to the power 3. All right. So 1 millimeter equals 1000 micrometers. So how much would be 0.03 millimeters means 3.0 into 10 raised to the power minus 5 millimeters would make up x micrometer. So we're going to cross multiply, and then we will get the answer of 3.0 into 10 raised to the power minus 2. That makes 0.03. All right. Alright, so let's move on to the next part of this question, that is part C, which says that nicotine is a chemical found in cigarette smoke. A molecule of a nicotine has a similar shape to a molecule of a neurotransmitter. Suggest and explain the effect of nicotine in the junctions between the neurons. Alright, so basically what happens is that nicotine is a neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitters are the chemical substances that are responsible for the transmission of impulses between the junctions. Junctions are synapses. So one neuron to another neuron, that is synapse, through the synapse, who will be responsible to carry out impulse from one neuron to another neuron? A neurotransmitter, obviously. So nicotine is a type of a neurotransmitter. So how the neurotransmitters or nicotine carry out their function? So what happens is that the nicotine or the neurotransmitters, like for instance, we're just talking about nicotine, so I'm just going to use the name of it. So what happens is that the nicotine binds to the receptors on postsynaptic membrane. See over here. This is the neurotransmitter. The vesicles containing neurotransmitters are released through the synapses, and then they bind on to this postsynaptic neuron. This is the postsynaptic neuron. This is the presynaptic neuron. All right. So once again, I'm telling you through the different colors so that this is more clear to you guys. So basically, what I was telling you that this entire thing. This is the presynaptic neuron, and from yellow, I'll be creating the postsynaptic neuron. This is the postsynaptic neuron. All right. So the vesicles from the presynaptic neuron containing neurotransmitters are released through the synapse, and they are binded, or they bind to the receptors present on the walls of the postsynaptic neuron. All right. So, and this in the same way, we're going to just have to write down what is happening up in the above diagram. So what happens is that nicotine binds to the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane or the neuron, and an impulse is generated or produced, or the impulse is transmitted. So what are we going to write down? That nicotine binds to the receptors on postsynaptic neuron membrane, and then what happens is, and then the impulse is generated. Okay. So 1 mark for telling that nicotine binds to receptors, 2nd mark for using the word postsynaptic neuron membrane, and 3rd mark for telling that the impulse is then generated and moved ahead. All right. So this was question number 3. Moving on to question number 4, which says that Lake Washington, United States of America, is a large freshwater lake. Between 1941 till 1963, an increasing amount of untreated sewage polluted the lake. So untreated sewage is polluting the lake and other water bodies. Suggest and explain. It has two parts. Suggest and explain the effect of this untreated waste on the lake ecosystem. This carries 5 marks. So we need to give 5 distinguishable points to the examiner. So what happens is when the untreated waste is thrown or is just let it flow in the water bodies or the lake, so basically we have the separate ecosystem or separate habitat of so many organisms present underwater. So what happens is that for example, if fertilizers are going away or are washed away, so the nitrates and phosphates in the fertilizers will cause the growth of different plants or different alga. The alga bloom will grow on the surface of the water. So basically what happens is, for example, this is a lake, all right, and this is a polluted, untreated waste that is washed on inside the lake. What happens is that the nitrates and other nutrients present in the fertilizer, the wash of waste, will give rise to the birth of the alga or different plants on the surface of the sea or the water bodies in this question, lake. All right, so this will cause the production of alga, and obviously they're going to decomposed by, like, they will be fed on by bacteria. And what will they do? They will give rise to the decomposition procedures. They will give rise to the decomposition processes. This will going to reduce the oxygen and the nutrients of the entire lake, of the entire habitat for the species already living inside it. Means for the fish, for the plants who are the inhabitants of this lake will be deprived of the oxygen, will be deprived of the sunlight, will be deprived of the nutrients. Why? Because they will be used by the layer of alga bloom on the surface of this lake that was created because of the nitrates and phosphates present in the untreated sewage water. Okay, I hope this is clear, and this entire process is known as eutrophication. So we are getting the mark for telling or for writing down the process of eutrophication in this question. So basically, examiner is asking you the process of eutrophication in 5 marks. So we will write that the process of eutrophication will take place. Nitrates and phosphates will give rise to the production of alga on the surface of water. They will be fed on by the bacteria and use up the oxygen available for the inhabitants of the ecosystem in the lake. All right, so this will result in the death of animals and plants living under water of the lake. Okay, so this was the process of eutrophication, and you were getting 1 mark for telling the eutrophication, the 2nd mark for telling that nitrogen and phosphates will give rise to the production of alga, 3rd mark for telling that they will be fed on by the bacteria, 4th mark for telling that this is going to use up the oxygen available for the inhabitants, and 5th mark for telling the consequence of this entire condition. All right, I hope this was clear. And now moving on towards the next part of the question, that is, between 1963 to 1968, new sewage treatment facilities were constructed. By 1968, the amount of untreated sewage entering Lake Washington was reduced to 0. And figure 4.1 shows how transparency of water in the lake has changed over time. Water transparency is a measure of how far light travels through the water. So let's highlight this point because this is going to help us in the future further question. So water transparency is a measure of how far light travels through the water. So the question says between 1957 till 1968. All right. So 1957 is here and 1968 is here. So what do we need to do is we are going to take out the value. So in 1957 it was 0.8, and at 1968 it was 3. So what? How do we calculate the change? 0.8, 3 minus 0.8, 3 minus 0.8. That will give us the value of 2.2. So how do we calculate the percentage change? We calculate the percentage change by dividing 2.2 from 0.8 multiplied by 100. So this is going to give us the value of 275. What did I do over here? I just subtracted the final with initial, and for percentage change we always use the initial value. All right, so the initial value was 0.8, so we calculated percentage change by subtracting final minus initial over initial multiplied by 100. So this gave us a value of 275. All right, so part C says that one species of fish that lives in Lake Washington's three-spined stickleback. Figure 4.2 shows three different distributions pattern of armor plates on the skin of these fish. All right, so this is low number of armor plates. Over here there are no armor plates, and over here there are armor plates. And then we have medium number of armor plates, and then we have many number of armor plates. Okay, so this is the table. Figure 4.1 shows how distribution pattern of armor plates on the skin of three spinned sticklebacks have changed over time. Table 4.1 is this. So this is a low number of plates, medium number of armor plates, and many armor plates. So part 1 says use the data from table 4.1 to describe how distribution pattern of armor plates have changed over time. So to write down such questions, the answer to such questions in which we are supposed to describe the trend, or in which we are supposed to describe the data that is tabulated in the table or shown in the graph. First of all, we just look on the general trend. All right, so what is actually the question asking for? We have to describe the distribution. Let me highlight this thing for you. Like, describe the distribution, how the distribution patterns of armor plates have changed over time. Okay, so changed over time. So we will just first of all comment on the general trend, that the percentage with let's see, this is low number of plates, this is the medium number of plates, and many armor plates. All right, number of armor plates. So let's look upon the general trend that low number of plates is decreasing subsequently, and the median number of plates decreased till 1975 and did not change till 2005. Then the many armor plates also increased till 1975 as well as till 2005. All right, so the medium and many armor plates increased over time. However, medium number of plates increased till 1975, whereas low number of armor plates decreased subsequently over time from 1975 till 2005. All right, so first of all we will tell the data, we will tell the general trend of the graph, that is percentage with low number of plates decreased from 1975 to 2005. Then we will talk about that percentage with many and medium plates increased with time. Then the percentage of medium number of plates increased till which year? Increased till 1975, and then became constant at 35% till 2005. The percentage of many number of plates increased till 49 in 2005. All right, and we can also talk about that the many armor plates showed the least value in 1968. That was 6. Only 6% of the many armor plates were present in 1968, which was least of all three. So we can write down the fourth point that there were least percentage of many plates in 1968. That was 6%. That's it. We gave 4 points for this 4-mark answer. Part 2 says that armor plates on the skin of a 3-spin stickleback protected from predators. Describe how the process of the natural selection may cause these changes in the distribution of plates over time. So where does natural selection act on? Natural selection acts on the variation among the species. Oh, all right. So the variation among the stickleback, the 3-spin stickleback gave the basis to the natural selection to act on, and there were genetic changes which increased the what can we say? Which will increase the water transparency, and hence they are going to be more visible to the predators. All right. So the organisms having less number of plates were like they were preyed upon, and they died over the time. And animals having the more or many number of armor plates survived, and over the time their frequency of the allele, like the allele frequency in their population increased with time, and they passed on these advantageous allele. Which was the advantageous allele? The advantageous allele was the many number of armor plates. They passed on this allele to their offsprings. All right. So what will we write down over here? That the variation gave the natural selection to act on. All right. So 3-spin stickleback. No, we can all just write the organisms. I'm just going to write the organisms. Organisms with more number of plates survived, while the less number of plates died. As the organisms with more number of plates survived, they passed on this advantageous allele to their offsprings. And with time, the distribution of plates changed. Alright, so this was the gist of this answer, in which natural selection was the selection pressure was the predators. Alright, so the predators were the selection pressure, and they were killing the organisms having the less number of plates, and the organisms having more number of plates were surviving, and they passed on this advantageous allele to their offsprings, and the distribution of plates changed over time. So question 5. Question 5 shows the photomicrograph of a center of a plant root. Identify each tissues labeled J and K. So, labeled J and K. Always remember that the vascular tissue in the roots will be the shape of the star. All right. So the star shape will be xylem, and outside the star there will be phloem. Alright, so the J is phloem and K is xylem. Phloem, xylem. State the term used to describe the group of tissues labeled L. So what do we call the phloem and xylem tubes collectively? We call them vascular bundles. Part 3 says that say 2 ways in which the structure of a cell in tissue K will differ from the structure of a cell in tissue J. So basically they're asking us to differentiate between the tissues xylem and phloem. So there are a lot of differences, like xylem is a continuous tube without any sieve plates, alright, and xylem is a dead tissue having lignified cell walls, and xylem does not carry any of the cell organelles. Unlike phloem, which carries sieve plates and which carries a lot of cytoplasm, it carries companion cells, it carries mitochondria, it carries nucleus. Basically, in summary, phloem carries all cellular organelles, unlike xylem. All right. So number one difference would be that xylem is lignified, while there is no lignin in phloem. Xylem has no sieve plates, while phloem has sieve plates. So the other differences that I just mentioned, like more differences are also written in the mark scheme, so you can learn it. And since this was a 2-mark question, we just needed to write down the two differences between the two vascular bundles. So part 4 says outline the function of tissue J. So what was tissue J? Tissue J was phloem. So the function of phloem is translocation. The function of phloem is translocation. What is translocation? Translocation is the transport of sucrose. They transport sucrose and amino acids from source to sink. That is, from the place they are produced to the place they have to be used. Okay? Sink. So, and secondly, the direction of the transport in the being taken place in the phloem is bidirectional, means it can also travel from source to sink, it can also travel from sink to source. So phloem has the bidirectional flow. So 1 mark for telling the function of the phloem, that is translocation, and 2nd mark for telling that it transports sucrose, 3rd mark for telling that they transport amino acids from source to sink, and 4th mark for telling that they have bidirectional flow. Now, part B, one says name the type of response shown by a plant root when it goes down into the soil after the seed has been germinated. So, anything that is going down means that it is attracted by the gravity. So, such sort of tropism is known as gravitropism. If something is growing in the direction of light, so we will call it as phototropism. But if something is growing in the direction of gravity, we will call it as gravitropism. Part 2 says that how to explain how this response shown by the plant root is necessary for the leaves to grow and appear green. So basically they're asking that how gravitropism by plant root is important for the leaves to grow and appear green. So when the root will grow in the direction of gravity, obviously it will be able to absorb more water, it will be able to absorb more ions, for example magnesium, nitrates, sodium, potassium. So then the absorption of water will result in cell elongation. This will obviously help more in photosynthesis because among the ions which are absorbed from the root are also present magnesium ions, which is very important for the synthesis of chlorophyll. And nitrates and amino acids are also, like nitrates are absorbed as well, which will give rise to the production of amino acids that is important for the overall growth of the plant. So what are we going to write down? That gravitropism will enable the roots will be able to absorb more water and take up ions like nitrates, magnesium, sodium. Water will help in cell elongation. Magnesium will help in the synthesis of more chlorophyll that will increase photosynthesis. Nitrates will help in making the amino acids and proteins. This will cause the overall growth of the plants. Alright, I hope this makes sense to you guys. Now let's move on to question number 6. Question 6 says figure 6.1 shows a pattern of results from an investigation into the effect of increasing light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. Light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. Describe and explain how the pattern results between the light intensity 20 to 30 arbitrary units. So 20 to 30. So this is 20, this is 30. Let me highlight this thing for you. So they say that describe between 20 to 30. Describe and explain. It has 2 marks and 2 points. So what is happening? You have to describe for the rate of photosynthesis is constant from 20 to 30. First of all, describe rate is constant. And why is that so? Because light intensity is no more a limiting factor. Some factor like other than light intensity, like carbon dioxide concentration or enzyme activity, is affecting the rate of photosynthesis will be the limiting factor, but not light intensity. All right, rate is constant because light intensity is no more a limiting factor. Makes sense? Part B says the investigation was repeated with an increased concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Draw a curve on figure 6.1 to show the pattern of results that will be expected from this second investigation. So the second investigation was increased concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And they're asking us to draw a curve showing the increase in concentration, showing the effect of increase in carbon dioxide concentration. So this will mean that now we are drawing at an increased carbon dioxide concentration. So the rate of photosynthesis will keep increasing and increasing, but it will not level out. Now it will not level out. At the light intensity 20, the rate of photosynthesis will not level out, and it is going to level out at somewhere more than 20. See, after for the light intensity, after 20 it was leveling out. Alright, this means that after 20, something other than light intensity is affecting the rate of photosynthesis. This means that might be carbon dioxide concentration. So we will level out. So this means that after 20, rate of more carbon dioxide concentration will be affecting the rate of photosynthesis. That's why we need to draw the constant line of the increased carbon dioxide concentration after 30. Okay. So this was it. We gained 2 marks from that. State the name of the product of photosynthesis that contains carbon atom. Obviously glucose. Outline part 3 says outline the uses made by plant of named carbohydrates. So outline the uses made by plant of named carbohydrates. Plant generates or synthesizes carbohydrates. So now they're asking us to describe the uses. So how many carbohydrates do the plant create? First of all, it synthesizes glucose. So glucose is used in, so the glucose is used in photosynthesis. Sorry, respiration, not photosynthesis. Is used in respiration, which helps to release energy in form of ATP. Other form of carbohydrate produced is by the plant is starch. So starch is used for storage, and the further use of glucose will be that glucose is used to make amino acids, lipids, and proteins. Other form of carbohydrate present. What else is present in the plant in form of carbohydrate? Cellulose, sucrose. So what is the use of cellulose? Cellulose is used for the cell walls. And the last but not the least, sucrose. Sucrose is used to transport. For transport, not transport. All right. So this question was about this. They were basically assessing that if you know the forms of carbohydrates that are produced in the plant, so one form is glucose, another form is starch, another form is cellulose, and the last form is sucrose. So we needed to describe the uses of each and every form of carbohydrate present in the plant. All right. So now question number 7, that is the last question of this paper. Let's read the question. That DNA carries genetic information in the form of genes. It's just a simple fill in the blanks. That is, so complete the paragraph by writing the most appropriate word for a letter in each space. DNA contains chemical elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, of course. Then nitrogen and phosphates as well, because DNA has nucleotide bases that consists of nitrogen and phosphorus. All right. Two strands of DNA coil together to form a double helix, because DNA is a double helix structure. Each strand is made up of a chain of nucleotides, because the DNA is a form of a polynucleotide. All right. Nucleotide. Bonds between the pair of bases hold the strands together. These bases always pair up in the same way. So the thymine is always pairing up with adenine and dash with dash. So thymine is pairing up with adenine and cytosine is pairing up with guanine. All right. So part B says that explain how genetic modification can be used to change the function of an enzyme so that it acts on a different substrate. So basically, we first have to write down what genetic modification actually is. So genetic modification is a change in genetic material, and enzymes are obviously the proteins. So the gene codes for the proteins, right? So when there will be a change in genetic material, there will be the change in the sequence of genes, sequence of amino acids. Obviously, this will give rise to the different protein with a different structure. All right. So this will change in the shape of enzyme. The shape of enzyme changes means that the shape of active site will change, and hence that will fit for some other substrate, for the new substrate, because the shape of active site is complementary to the substrate, right? So when the shape of active site will be changed, obviously it is going to be more fit for another or the new type of substrate. So that was the answer to this question. I hope that this paper was clear. It was just like this was the last part of the paper, and if you have any question, you can always ask in the comment section below. And in the next video, we'll come up with the next new paper. Today, we solved May, June 2023, paper 2 of O-Levels Biology. And till then, goodbye and good luck.